everyone, thanks for joining me again this week. It's about 5 o'clock now, so why don't we go ahead and get started. So thanks for joining me. For those who don't know me, my name is Soski. I'm a naturopathic physician here in Portland, Oregon, and will soon be practicing in California as well, in addition to Oregon. So check out my website, check me out if you have any interest in pursuing naturopathic medicine. My practice in Portland specializes in cancer care, so if you or a loved one have the unfortunate diagnosis of any form of cancer and would like some adjunctive support to the care that they're getting, please let me know. Well, it's lovely to have you guys, so let's get started. So today we're going to be making a Moroccan roasted eggplant and lentil dish. I really love Mediterranean food, and it's awesome because Mediterranean food really is very versatile. There's many countries surrounding the Mediterranean Sea, and so they each bring their own flair. You have more Middle Eastern food, you have Spanish food, you have Moroccan food, you have kind of the more European, kind of like the mix between Middle Eastern and Europe food, so it's awesome. And it's also one of the healthiest diets out there. The Mediterranean diet it utilizes a lot of really healthy oils and lots of vegetables and plant-based protein. So that's kind of the diet that I adapt or that I eat in my daily life. And it was requested that I share a recipe that goes along more with those eating patterns. So here we go. So we are gonna get started. So we're gonna start with eggplant. Now I was able to find these really beautiful little mini eggplants, so that's what I'm going to be using today, but any eggplant will work. And eggplant is also the vegetable of the day, so more on that later. I started, for those who are new to this show, I started vegetable of the day last week, so every week I highlight one vegetable and tell you a bunch of fun facts and a bunch of health facts and whatnot about these vegetables. So let's get started. So take your eggplant and grab a knife. And then you're just gonna chop the top off and the bottom just to kind of make it. Actually, only the bottom if you really need to. If there's kind of like a hard piece at the bottom, this one doesn't have it, so I'm not gonna chop the bottom on this. But chop the tops off. And then we are gonna cut the eggplant in half. So I have 3 of these little mini ones, so I'm going to do 3 mini ones. You can do one big one, you can do a couple small ones. It really depends on how many people you're trying to feed and how much leftovers you want to have. And this one kind of has a bad part at the bottom, so I'm just going to cut that off. Okay, great. Now, one thing we should do is preheat the oven, because we're going to need that very hot. So I'm going to preheat the oven to 450 degrees. Great. Now, while that's getting ready, we're going to add apply some olive oil to the surface of this after we scar it. So scarring is kind of creating some hash marks. You'll see it looks really pretty when it's over. So you're just going to take the tip of your knife. I wouldn't necessarily do this in the air, but I'm just doing it to show you. And then you're just going to kind of create a tiny little cut across. And you're going to kind of do that in 1 inch chunks that way. And you can do a crosshatch. It serves a purpose, but it also looks really beautiful when all is said and done. So that's kind of what the hatch marks look like in the end. So I'm going to go ahead and do that for all the rest of them. So this is called scoring something. And oftentimes what happens with the eggplant is when you bake it, the top kind of becomes a sealed layer almost. And so when you score it, it kind of allows the juices to be released, and it allows the cooking process so it doesn't kind of like get pouchy and kind of mushy on the inside and just like hard on the outside. It kind of allows a nicer consistency. If you don't do this, it's not a big deal also. It works just as well and it's delicious. This is just a fancy little tip. Great. And now we're gonna brush it with olive oil. So I'm gonna show you 2 ways to do this. I have a brush, a culinary brush, and so oftentimes you use it to layer oil on, or a seasoning, or an egg wash. And there's this is a silicone brush, has silicone bristles. I actually don't really like it all that much. I would prefer to have more of like a brush, but this is what we got. So I'll show you how to use that and do it this way, and then I'll show you how to do it if you don't have a brush. So if you have a brush, you're going to take some of the oil, and then you just brush it on, like you're painting. Now, eggplant really absorbs oil, so you want to do a couple good layers with the brush because it will just absorb it. And you'll see, it won't do it right away, but let's say we put this one down and check on it in just a second, and you'll see it just soaks right in. All right, now if you don't have a brush and you want to do this, what you'll do is you can just pour a little, like drizzle a little olive oil on top of it, and then quickly, before it rubs in, or before it absorbs in, just rub it around with your fingers. So this is definitely the messier way to do it. But we'll get the job done. I'm gonna wash my hands out. I'm gonna do it now with just the brush so I don't get my hands so dirty. All right, so we're gonna finish brushing these. All right, so now all our eggplants are brushed with oil. And now you're gonna take a 9x12 or whatever size you need. If you need, you can use a smaller one if you don't have as much eggplant. But you're just gonna place them on the dish in a nice, beautiful array. I'm gonna wash my hands again because now they're oily. And now we're gonna sprinkle the spices on them. So we're gonna do salt, pepper, and then I would like to introduce you guys to a spice blend called Ras El Hanout. It's a Moroccan spice blend. I like to put it on everything. It's super versatile. This is something that I have made up ahead of time, and you might be able to buy it, but I just make it. I included the recipe for this spice blend in the comment section or in the description. But it has about 10 different spices: coriander, cumin, cinnamon, paprika, ginger, cloves, nutmeg, a whole bunch of stuff, and it's super delicious. I'll talk more about it later when we are cooking the lentils, but so we're going to use a little bit of this on the eggplant as well. So this doesn't need to be a lot of spice. This is just going to be a brush or like a sprinkling of some salt and pepper. And this is definitely to taste. This can also easily be eliminated if you're trying to keep a low salt diet. Little salt and pepper. And then we're gonna do our spice mix. All right. And then lastly, for the eggplant, we're gonna put just a sprig of fresh rosemary. So I have a rosemary bush in my garden, so that's awesome. But if you don't, you can get fresh rosemary at the store easily. And you're just gonna take one little piece and put it on each eggplant. So in the end, your eggplants will look like this. All right, now we're gonna wait for the oven to preheat a little bit longer before we throw things in there. In the meantime, we are gonna we're gonna chop some of our vegetables. So now we're gonna move on to the lentil dish. And the vegetables that we're gonna use today are onion, fennel, carrot, celery. I accidentally put broccoli when I wrote this and I posted it the first time, so I have since changed it. Sorry for the confusion. I love broccoli. I have used broccoli almost every week. I think this is the first week I haven't used some form of broccoli. So it's maybe just a Freudian slip of my love of broccoli. But we're using celery, not broccoli. So let's get chopping. For this, you can make things whatever size you want. Usually, since we're kind of making like a lentil stew with it, I like making things kind of on the smaller side so I can get chunks of it with lentil and so things kind of mix easily, but you can do big chunks of vegetable too if you prefer that. So while I'm chopping vegetables, since eggplant is our vegetable of the day, I would love to tell you about some fun facts about eggplant. So eggplant actually originates from Asia and has been at least documented in existence for about 1,500 years. Just a very long time, mostly in Asia and China. And in my research, I found an interesting fact that in China, and this is totally outdated, I don't know if they still, follow this or anything, but it used to be that part of when women were going to get married, part of their bride price was that a woman must have 12 eggplant recipes prior to her wedding day in order for her to qualify for marriage. So I thought that was interesting. So here's one for all you ladies out there. I'm engaged. I'm gonna get married. So this is one of my 12. So eggplant, like many vegetables, is actually a fruit. And so because it has seeds, it makes it a fruit. And actually, a subclass from fruit is it's actually a berry. And so that is something that we learned last week about zucchini, also a fruit, also a berry. Same with eggplant. So those are its botanical classifications. Now, we don't treat it like a berry, obviously. It has a sweetness to it, but it's not super sweet. So it's definitely culinarily a vegetable. And it's also part of the nightshade family of vegetables, which includes peppers and potato and tomato. Now, nightshade vegetables can irritate some people, and some people can have like an intolerance to nightshade vegetables. It causes stomach upset or other chronic inflammation. So don't make this recipe. Maybe look to another week if nightshades are an issue for you, or you can just leave the eggplant out and just make the lentil part. So we're gonna throw this all in a bowl. So in the United States, we call this vegetable eggplant, but in other parts of the world, that's not what it's called. In many parts of Europe and the UK, and then places that the UK has influenced over the years, they call it aubergine. So I studied abroad in the UK, And that was the first time I ever knew that it was called anything other than eggplant. And same with, we learned last week that zucchini is also called courgette, and I didn't know that until I studied abroad too. So those were some new things I learned then. But yeah, so in the United States, we have a couple different names for things than a lot of people around the world. So now I'm chopping fennel. Fennel is an awesome, underrated vegetable. It doesn't get used enough. It has a really awesome, sweet, anise smell and flavor. It's great in many, many dishes. And I realized I hadn't used it yet, so we're going to use some fennel today. So again, I'm just chopping things, and kind of, for me, I wanted to chop them kind of smaller, so that's what we're doing. So, so eggplant comes from Asia, and it wasn't brought into Europe until the 1800s. And now it has become quite the staple of the Mediterranean diet, like I was talking about. And I'll talk more about the Mediterranean diet later, because I think we'll have some time. But yeah, so now it's a pretty good staple of Mediterranean diets. Our oven is still preheating, so we're not going to throw that in yet. Which works out because, so the eggplant is going to cook for about a half hour, and same with the lentils, so a little bit shorter probably for the lentils. So it's not a bad thing if we wait a second, because then it'll all be done all at the same time. And as always, feel free to leave, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments, and I will try to make sure that I get to see them, especially if there's any downtime or anything. I love questions because it helps me fill some content. All right, so we're done with our fennel. Now it's time for some onion. Now, some of the health benefits of eggplant, coming back to our vegetable of the day, some benefits of eggplants are they are a great source of fiber, B vitamins such as B1, B6, and niacin, and folate, potassium, copper, manganese, and vitamin K. So lots of good vitamins and minerals. And then also, it has a lot of great antioxidants, especially in the skin. So things that are more colorful, so like the purple in the skin, means that it has a lot of phytonutrients. And I talk every week about phytonutrients. It's the beautiful part about nutrition and healthy eating is that all of these awesome plants have tons of phytonutrients, which have antioxidant potentials, which are good for cardiovascular disease and cancer. So eggplant is definitely high on that list, given its purple skin, often purple skin. There are different kinds of eggplant. This onion's got some bad spots in it that I'm going to cut out. All right, so I just heard the oven shut off. So as soon as I'm done cutting this onion, we're going to throw the eggplant in. And again, I'm cutting these kind of small to make it kind of stewy. Now, given all those vitamins and nutrients, in eggplant. That means that they are good for building strong bones and preventing osteoporosis, improving anemia, which is the medical term for a low blood count. It's also good for improving cognition, and good for the digestive system and cardiovascular system, like I said, because of the antioxidants, and then also those anti-cancer phytonutrients. So eggplant, super good, super healthy for you. One of my favorite dishes with eggplant is baba ganoush. I think it is just one of the tastiest dips you could ever make. And probably one day I will do my own, but I haven't perfected my baba ganoush recipe. I have one that I make, but it's not my favorite. It could definitely use improvement, so I'm going to wait till I perfect it before I bring it out to the world. All right, now our onions are done. And since our oven is ready, we're going to throw these in and start a timer for 30 minutes. All right, and we're going to crush some garlic. Did peel some of these ahead of time just for time's sake. I do have a couple more to peel. Check to see. So again, it's always good. I'm going to say this every week. It's great to chop your garlic or press your garlic as much ahead of time as possible. You know, at least 10 minutes. I always forget to make it the first thing that I do, but theoretically, it should be the first thing you do, so that the awesome phytonutrients in the garlic can really have time to interact. Once you press it, it breaks the cell wall and has enzymes. Gives enzymes the opportunity to interact with each other with different nutrients in the garlic and activate them. And so this allows the activation time so that you have the healthiest or the most potential from your garlic when you use it. Recommend definitely a garlic press, especially if you're doing a bunch of garlic, because it's just easier and quicker. All right, I'm going to clean out the garlic press. All right, and then the last vegetable we have to cut is some celery. And now I know my parents are probably watching this, as they do every week, because they are awesome and they support me. My dad hates celery, so I would say you don't have to include celery. There are definitely people in the world who hate one vegetable or another. That shouldn't be a reason to not use a recipe at all. Most often, if you just eliminate one of the vegetables in a recipe, unless it's like the core vegetable, like eliminating the eggplant out of this, it really doesn't change the recipe all that much, and you can oftentimes substitute it for something. So because there's fennel in here, that would kind of take over the flavor, kind of carry the flavor instead of the celery, so you could just do that, or you could just add in broccoli, like I almost tried to tell everyone to do earlier. Not that they have the same flavor, but you know, it doesn't always have to be exactly how the recipe says it. And I actually highly encourage people, especially who are new to cooking, new to healthy cooking, is just to play around, to see what different things are. Make a meal that doesn't taste good. An example last night is I was trying to make some cashew cheese, and I didn't have the proper ingredients, and so I just improvised, and it did not come out well. I threw the batch out, but hey, you know, I learned, and now I learned not to do that. And so it's all a learning process. And I compost everything, so it's nice it doesn't go in the trash. So I don't feel bad because it's not super wasteful. So I highly encourage you composting any vegetable waste that you have. Yeah. Now, as I finish chopping the celery, I will tell you the last fun fact about eggplant that I have for you guys today, which is that eggplant actually has the highest level of nicotine than any other plant or edible plant out there. This was published in a research paper a number of years ago, I think actually back in the 90s. And so it's really interesting. Now, it does have the highest level out of edible plants, but that is still way lower than even the amount of nicotine you would get from passive smoking. So, or passive smoke, secondhand smoke. So it's not a lot. It's really negligible, but it's kind of just interesting. All right, so we're done with this, and we're ready to cook the lentils. So we're going to go over to the stove. All right, so we're going to first start just by heating some oil up. Now, I like taking a piece of onion and just throwing it in my oil ahead of time before it's even warmed up, because then I can really use that as a gauge. I have a tendency to, when I'm cooking, leave the oil and try to multitask and go do something else, and then it gets too hot and starts smoking, which is bad because it oxidizes the oil and creates compounds that it's hard for your body to process. So by throwing just like one small piece of something in as the oil is heating, you really get a better gauge as to how hot the oil is, because then once it starts to sizzle, like it is now, you know it's ready. So I'm going to dump my vegetables in carefully so that you don't splatter oil everywhere. Now, I just threw in all the vegetables except for the garlic. The garlic's going to go in a second, a little bit later. So we're going to cook that for about 4 to 5 minutes, stirring occasionally. You don't need to get it fully cooked because it's going to cook with the lentils and kind of the stew with the water and everything. So they don't have to be fully cooked, but you want to just get them to the point where they're just about to soften up. So I'm going to get the rest of the things that we need, which is 4 cups of water. Salt and pepper. Some bay leaves. And our spice mix. And the garlic. Put the garlic on the cutting board over there, so we're going to leave it there. As the veggies are kind of starting to cook, I'll tell you about this spice blend. So, like I said, it's very versatile. I love using it in things like this, like a stew, to kind of give a lot of really great flavor. I also really love this on chickpeas. So if you take just whole chickpeas with some oil and this spice blend, and then bake them, really really delicious chickpea recipe. Super yummy. You could throw it on top of toast, like on top of avocado. That's a flavor for some avocado toast. It's really just good for just about anything. It's a really really delicious combination of spices. So I'm just gonna check this. So got a question. If you cheat and use pre-minced garlic, has it already rested? So yes, but actually I think that it's rested a little too much. So oftentimes pre-cut or pre-chopped things have been sitting there for a long time. And over time they do lose. So there's kind of like that peak with garlic, there's that peak of building nutritious potential, but then over time as it sits there, it's going to taper off. Same with most vegetables. They're freshest. If they're pre-cut, they kind of tend to lose. There's more surface area to oxidize, and so there's more oxidation occurring. Often the skin protects it from oxidation also, so when you expose the inside flesh, it oxidizes, and oxidation usually is bad, especially in cooking. But I would also say that it is better to use pre-minced garlic than no garlic at all. So there's definitely is benefit. It's just not going to be as much benefit as fresh garlic. But and same with chopped veggies. I think if chopping veggies is really difficult for you for whatever reason, be it time, be it energy, be it a physical issue, joint pain, energy, any of that, buying pre-chopped veggies and eating pre-chopped veggies is way better than eating no veggies at all. So also encourage them. Just accidentally turn that down quite a bit. All right, so things are starting to kind of get translucent, so that means that they're approaching being ready. The carrots are always going to take longer, they're thicker, they're starchier, but that's okay. They will cook just enough, or they will cook just fine with the lentils and whatnot. All right, so the next step is to mix in our garlic, salt and pepper, and our spice blends. So I'm going to do 2 tablespoons of our spice, or sorry, 2 teaspoons of our spice blend. And a little bit more for good luck. Starting to smell like rosemary in here. All right, and some salt and pepper. And I would say about a half a teaspoon to a teaspoon. It really depends on how salty you like things. Know that you can always add more salt. You can't, it's harder to take it out, so I always say go slow and start slow and then increase. So we got our salt. And lastly is our garlic. All right. And we can also just go ahead and add the lentils in now too. So we're going to do 1.5 cups of lentils today. So I'm using, I think these are French lentils, which are smaller. They tend to cook a little bit quicker than the bigger lentils. And then we're just going to mix that all together. And if you throw in a big clump of garlic like I just did, make sure you really, really mix it so that it spreads out well and it doesn't stay clumped together. So just keep your eye on that. Another hack is if you don't have fresh garlic, for whatever reason, garlic powder always works to give a dish the garlic flavor. All right, and once you have that pretty mixed together, you're going to add 2 bay leaves and some water. And you want the water to be covering everything. So if for whatever reason the 4 cups of water didn't cover everything, add a little bit more so you at least have a little bit so that everything is at least submerged. And then you want to kind of dunk your bay leaves in there. And then we're going to bring that to a boil. And once it's boiling, then we're just going to reduce it to a simmer and let it sit and let those lentils cook and the rest of the vegetables cook. Now, in the meantime, while our lentils are cooking and we have our eggplant in the oven, we are going to make some toppings. So today we're going to make a lemon garlic tahini sauce. So I'm not going to show you how to make tahini from scratch. There's a lot on the internet about that. So it's pretty easy to, well, it's not easy to make, but there's lots of guides on how to make that. So we're just going to take store-bought tahini and upgrade it. All right, so this is pretty much boiling. I'm actually going to transfer it to the back one because we're going to need this other one again. All right, so let's make some lemon garlic tahini. So for this part, you are going to need some tahini, half a lemon at least, 2 cloves of garlic, splash of maple syrup, and some water. So I have more than I'm going to use, but always good to have more. Okay, so we're going to start with a 1/4 cup of tahini. Now tahini is essentially, it's like a nut butter. It is a sesame seed, and so it is more of a seed butter. But it can be, because of that, when you buy it, it can separate like peanut butter does with the oil on the top and the rest of it below. So make sure that you have it really well mixed together before you do this. All right, so we're going to start with a 1/4 cup of tahini. And then just going to use that tablespoon because then we're going to do 1 tablespoon of lemon juice. The last time I made this, I ended up needing more lemon juice, so just keep that in mind. You know, we might modify it at the end depending on how it tastes. It's a big lemon, almost doesn't fit. going to start with 1 tablespoon of lemon juice. And then we're going to take our handy microplane that we've used in the past, and we're going to microplane 2 pieces of garlic, or 2 cloves of garlic in there. Just stir our mixture real quick. And then you really don't want big pieces of garlic in there, so at the top, when you have like these little pieces left, with other things I might throw them in depending on the recipe, but for this I'm just going to compost the rest of this because I don't want any big chunks in there. I just want the little microplane chunks. You're going to kind of just scrape off the bottom to get all of it in there. And then, maple syrup. Don't forget the maple syrup. So this one's just going to use a tiny, tiny bit of maple syrup, if I can get it open. There we go. So this is just going to use a 1/4 teaspoon of maple syrup. And then you're going to mix that together until it forms a paste. Now, sesame is another really big component of the Mediterranean diet, the Mediterranean cooking. It's got a lot of really awesome healthy fats. I'm currently using a tablespoon to mix this, and I don't think it's the best choice. So I'm going to grab an actual spoon. All right, so now that we have this all kind of mixed into a paste, what we're going to do is we're going to add water slowly to get it the consistency that we want. Now, this may be different. Some people may want theirs a little bit more runny, and others may want it a little bit thicker. I like mine a little bit on the runny side so that I can actually like drizzle it on like a sauce. So I'll probably end up adding quite a bit of water, but we just start slow. Maybe adding like a teaspoon to a tablespoon at a time. And then mixing that together. Now, as it sits too, it will solidify and get less runny. So we are making this ahead of time before the dish is quite ready. So you can always just add a little bit more water right at the end, right before you're about to serve it, to get it the consistency you want again. Still not runny enough, so I'm going to add some more water. And as you see, like the tahini that you buy, it looks, I mean, it's like kind of brownish. you know, it runs like nut butter. It's very thick. It's not thin, like the tahini that you get in a restaurant that you like would dip falafel in, or comes on top of a gyro sandwich or something like that, is more like this. So they add water and lemon juice and stuff like that to really water it down and enhance it and make it more of a sauce than a paste or a nut butter. The lentils are going crazy. It's awesome. Alright, so now I've gotten it pretty, still kind of drippy, but it's a little bit, still kind of thick, but I'm going to wait till the end to do the final addition of water, just because it's going to get thick anyway in the meantime. So while I'm doing that, or so while that's sitting and while we're waiting for the, actually let's taste it first before we do that. Let's see if it needs anything else. So I think it needs more lemon, like last time. So I'm gonna add some lemon. Now what the lemon does is it really kind of gives it that light pick-me-up. So if you feel like something's too heavy, adding lemon juice or a little bit of vinegar makes it lighter and kind of pop a little bit more. Much better. All right, so that's gonna chill there, and now we are gonna brown some pine nuts. We're gonna take a small frying pan. We're gonna take about a 1/4 cup of pine nuts, which is perfect. It's about the amount that I have left in my house. Pine nuts can be pretty expensive, but they're at Costco, so maybe people are going out to Costco. Great place to affordable way to get pine nuts. So you're gonna just put them on your pan, and this is definitely an art. And usually I'm not the one doing this. Usually my significant other is the one who browns these, because he's a little bit more attentive to detail than I am. But the thing is that you have to keep them moving in order for them to not burn. And you want them brown, you don't want them burnt. So, well, it's not hot yet, so we're going to let it get hot. But once it starts, you'll see once it starts happening, when the browning starts happening, it's just going to kind of domino effect, and it'll happen really quickly. And you want to make sure that you keep the pine nuts moving on your pan as you do it. Some people will do this in oil also. You can fry them in oil and have this, it has the same effect, but I've always done it with no oil and just on its own. So as that's heating up, one of the last toppings that we're going to do is some fresh parsley. You can also do some fresh rosemary. So I have an extra sprig of rosemary that I pulled from the garden, and the parsley is also from my garden, so that's pretty cool that that's coming in now. So we're just going to take a little bit of rosemary and a little bit of parsley, grab our knife, and just chop it up. And this is just going to be toppings for the that was just So feel free to leave any questions or comments. I think I got, yeah. Not missing any yet. So I'd like to tell you guys about the Mediterranean, a little bit more about the Mediterranean diet. Now, it's kind of this blanket term, but there's definitely some parameters that have been established. And the Mediterranean diet is one that focuses a lot on lots of vegetables, a lot of plant-based proteins and legumes, some lean meat, but not a lot of red meat or pork. It's a lot more, or maybe like a little bit of pork, but a lot of fatty fish, some poultry, but using meat more as like a condiment or a side dish rather than the main event, and really using vegetables, legumes, and whole grains as your main dish. And it also uses a lot of healthy fats, a lot of seeds and nuts. Oops, see, it's already turned. So now this has started, so I'm going to cut myself off. This has already started, so now we're going to have to just keep them moving. Let's see, maybe I can do a field trip. Let's see how this works. As you see, they're starting to brown. We just have to keep them moving because you want them to kind of evenly burn, or evenly brown on all sides. Alright, so let's go back over here. Yeah, so a lot of healthy oils, from olive oil, seeds and nuts, avocado, so it has a really high omega-3 content. So there's two different, well, there's many types of omega fats, but the two most popular are omega-3 and omega-6. Both are necessary for all the functions in your body, but the standard American diet has a lot more omega-6, which can be very pro-inflammatory in your body. And inflammation tends to lead to disease. So an omega-3 is anti-inflammatory. Now, you need, like I said, you need both in order to have healthy cellular function and all that. But we intake too much omega-6 and not enough omega-3s in our standard American diet. And things that have omega-3s are olive oil, seeds and nuts, and flax, hemp. Fish also has a lot of fatty fish like salmon and sardines have a lot of really great omega-3 fatty acids. And so the Mediterranean diet has a lot of those, and a lot of those phytonutrients because it's high in vegetable. And so it's really one of the healthiest diets, I think, based on research and based on experience. All right, so our pine nuts are done. And as you see, they've kind of got a nice brown to them. And now our eggplant's done, so we're going to pull that out. So I'll take you again on a field trip so you can see the eggplant. I'll try to move slower so that doesn't cause. There's our beautiful eggplants. And then there's our lentils cooking. So the lentils are probably just about ready. I'm going to give them a taste. They're very hot. All right, so those are almost finished, so close. So we're gonna do our finishing touches on our sauce. Add just a splash more water. And again, as we're finishing up, feel free to leave any questions or comments in the comment section, and I'll answer your questions. If you have any questions about the recipe, about naturopathic medicine, about the Mediterranean diet, any of that. So now we have that sauce, like very liquidy consistency. That's how I like it. Now, as this is finishing up, I'm going to shut the heat off and just kind of let it finish out as it cools. This is another great use for leftover rice, is to use with this dish. So I'm going to use some leftover rice that I have in the fridge. I also have some leftover quinoa that would work too. Quinoa, rice, pasta, anything that you have left over or a little bit extra of, you can use as a base for this recipe. So I'm going to take some rice, kind of break it up. It's kind of, this was previously frozen, so. Which is another thing I love doing with leftover quinoa. Like if you make too much grain for a dish, you can just always just like put it in a container and freeze it. It freezes really well and thaws out really well. So we're going to do a layer of rice. And as our lentils are just finishing, I want to say just a couple more things about the Mediterranean diet is that there's something called blue zones. And blue zones are areas of the world where people live to, there's a significant amount of people in that area that live to 100 or beyond 100, and they're called centurions. And there have been a lot of studies of blue zones. One is in an island off Greece. One is in Japan. One is in Loma Linda, California. Seventh-day Adventists. And what all of those regions have in common is a pretty high plant-based diets. So Mediterranean diet I already talked about. Seventh-day Adventists are vegetarian. In this area in Japan uses a lot of vegetables and they cook too. And seeing that fatty fish, not a lot of hardly any red meat. And a big emphasis in those areas also on community, eating together, dancing, having a good time, stress reduction and all that. So it's not just diet that affects those areas, but diet is a really big reason. So when they were studying these blue zones, they found these dietary patterns in common. The Mediterranean diet is one of those diets that was found in the blue zone. So, all right, I think our lentils are just about ready. So I'm going to grab a ladle that is very hot. I forget, they sit up here above my stove, and so when I turn the stove on, it gets really hot. So I'm going to use something to help hold that. All right, so we're going to mix this up, and we're going to take a nice scoop. So I've already laid the rice out on my plate. You can't really see it because it's white, and the light is reflecting off of it. But then we're going to take our lentils, take a big scoop of lentil. And then take one of our eggplants. Put that right on the center, as you can see. And then we're going to take our sauce, drizzle some sauce all over it. And the sauce can also be made in bigger batches. I made a smaller batch because it's just me and I don't want to waste. But you can always double the recipe in order to increase the amount of sauce depending on what size group you're cooking for. So, so we have the sauce, and then we're going to sprinkle some of our fresh herbs on it. Let's get some of this stuff out of the way so you can actually see this. And then lastly is some of our pine nuts. Just gonna sprinkle that on. And there we go. Now we have roasted eggplant. Ooh, don't fall off the plate. Roasted eggplant with lentils and Moroccan spice. So this, you can see, and we're ready to eat. Let's see how it came out today. It's very hot. That was really good. Lentils could probably cook a little bit longer, but I tried to speed it up for the video so keep it within an hour. But no, if you're, oh, I forgot something for the lentils. Oh my gosh, I forgot a step. Well, I won't do it right now, but I did forget a step, which is to add a little bit of vinegar and a little bit more maple syrup at the end. It will make it your dish so much better. So I highly recommend you add these before you eat them. I apologize. I just got caught up in everything. So yeah, so add those at the end. I'll add them to the dish afterwards. But still really good without them, just definitely enhances it with. So thank you all so much for cooking with me again this week. I really appreciate it. Thank you for your comments and your questions. If you have any suggestions or inquiries or things you want to know more about or want to see cooked in the future, please feel free to let me know either in the comments or a private message, and I'm definitely open to all of your ideas. So thank you so much, and I'll see you again next week. Bye.